Coming up on Global Business, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting wraps up in Davos, Switzerland. We're on the ground for a recap of the biggest issues discussed under this year's theme of rebuilding trust. Investing in China. Fresh numbers from China's Commerce Ministry shows the number of newly established foreign invested businesses jumped by nearly 40% in 2023 compared to the previous year. And industrial strength. Chinese industry sees a robust rebound last year following the pandemic, with the country retaining the top spot as the world's largest manufacturer for a 14th straight year. And welcome everyone to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wong here in Beijing. Well, this year's annual meeting of the World Economic Forum has wrapped up in Davos, Switzerland. This year's gathering of leaders in government, business, and academia is held under the theme of rebuilding trust. The annual meeting saw over 200 sessions that covered how to achieve security and cooperation in a fractured world, to AI, to job creation, and of course, climate change. Delegates say the event's highlights include discussions on sustainability, the impact of the conflict in the Middle East, and ways to ensure equitable access to artificial intelligence. The latest edition of the Chief Economist's Outlook said regional growth forecasts vary widely, and no region is slated for very strong growth this year. So indeed, the curtains have fallen on this year's annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. So what were the big issues up for discussion on the final day of this week-long gathering? Our Evangelo Sipsas joins us now from Davos with more. Evangelo, thank you so much for joining us. Look, from China-U.S. relations to the global economic outlook, there were still quite a bit of heavy-hitting topics on the final day of the meeting. Walk us through the key moments from today's events.
Well, most of the people have wrapped up and left. All the session have ended, and only few of us are left here. And you would think that today would be a quiet day. Well, if you compare to the previous days, it was. But as you mentioned, a lot was on the agenda. Of the U.S.-China relations, there was a panel about how to descript the Chinese and U.S. relations. There was a lot of discussions there of how the two countries have been competing with each other, but also a lot of mentioning of how those countries need to work with each other for the better of its people. Of course, that had led the path, as they mentioned in that panel, through the meeting that President Xi had with Joe Biden in San Francisco. Now, on another note, there was another event that took place, which was the Global Outlook, Global Economic Outlook, where a number of people also spoke there, including the president from the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, and the Director General from the World Trade Organization, Enjoy Nkonjo-Iweala. She specifically mentioned that in the outlook that the trade services and digital transformation has been growing and has been helping a lot of economies, and it will continue to grow. They say that they've seen a tremendous increase since 2000 from digital platforms, now with artificial intelligence and green investments that have been up to $1.9 trillion. And she specifically mentioned that we shouldn't be afraid or challenged by the change of the supply chains because of some of the conflicts that are happening around the world, but we should see it as an opportunity. That's how she finished her speech here on the World Economic Forum. Now, Christine Lagarde also spoke on the same line, but also mentioned that Europe, because of its poor outlook of 2024, needs to focus more on its own economy, and rather than be relying on the United States, they should create their own dependency on their own economy. So their best defense, she said, is attack on subsidies. The same along with the finance minister from Germany. He said pretty much that we do not need to leave it to the United States. We need to take subsidies in our own hands. So a lot of that has been discussed. A lot that was on the table. Of course, the upcoming elections that will affect up to 4 billion people around the world were also discussed. But as you mentioned, the conflicts that are happening around the world, from the Red Sea to the Middle East, but also what is going on in Ukraine. So that's pretty much what wrapped up the last day here in Davos. And we're going to expect more actually to come out as the closing remarks will be taking place right now.
All right. Many thanks for that update and report, Evangelo Sipsas, for us in Davos. Thank you. Now at Davos, CGTN's Guan Xin spoke with Professor Michael Spence, a Nobel laureate in economics. Professor Spence shared with us his outlook on the global economy this year and the key factors that will shape global growth going forward.
I think my outlook in the short run is it's a little difficult and not all that optimistic. After that, I think things like AI and the potential productivity surge we could get from it, change the picture, at least potentially, significantly. But we're talking, closer to the end of the decade for that kind of thing to kick in. So a little tough in the short run and potentially better in the long run.
Changes. Let's talk about the China's economy, because
Yep.
it's also going transformative changes, and the old growth drivers may not be efficient as before.
Yep.
And do you think China can sustain productivity growth and avoid the middle income trap, and by use of information, for example, innovation, for example?
China is, I don't think, likely to fall into the middle income trap, nor is it anything like the Japan situation, back in the late 1980s. Partly because, its potential growth is still quite large at these per capita incomes. Second, China is a very big investor in long-run growth drivers, science, technology, et cetera. It's, on a par with the United States or better in multiple technologies, including crucial ones like artificial intelligence, many green technologies. China's in the lead. So it's very hard to make a case that China is sort of going to get trapped, with a shortage of growth drivers. And so I don't think that's very likely at all.
Well, because all those excitement of artificial intelligence, that also pose a risk to the development of society because of the labor force changes and regulatory landscape. How should we get prepared for this new kind of industrial revolution?
Well, first of all, any society has their own version of what the downside risks are, but we do have to protect ourselves from those. I mean, you can misuse these technologies. Any powerful technology has high potential and is also dangerous at the same time. And we should push in this direction, is to give people and systems powerful digital assistants that make them more efficient, not replace them, but make them more productive.
Right.
So my base case is that the right use, the upside case for AI, Gen AI, is a big productivity surge.
And our Guanshin also spoke with Matthew Blake, head of the Center for Financial and Monetary Systems at the World Economic Forum. He shared his perspectives on the resilience of the global financial system and the impact of AI on the financial industry.
I think the general tenor here is of cautious optimism. In terms of the resilience of the financial sector, frankly, I think it's remarkable that we've gone from essentially a zero-rate environment in many very large economies around the world not too long ago through one of the largest tightening cycles that we've seen on a historical basis. And by and large financial institutions have held up extremely well. And, we can talk about resilience in an abstract way, but I think the clearest way is to look at demonstrable data. And what we've seen is a very resilient system. And I think there were a lot of lessons learned and internalized, both by supervisors, regulators, central bankers, but also the business community coming out of the global financial crisis. And I think we've seen that pay dividends in this environment.
Last year, we saw some financial risks associated with some regional banks. So there any kind of specific risks we should look out for this year? So
that's a great call out. Certain segments of the market that were less regulated, and there are other examples going forward too, were slightly less resilient. But I think the market reacted in a way where large institutions came together to try and support those that were more fragile, and policymakers stepped in aggressively. These, again, I think were based on lessons learned through previous environments to really react swiftly. And I think that notion of speed is really important, because what we're seeing here, and you've been observing this meeting for the last few days now, one of the core areas that we're focused on is emerging technologies and a deep dive on artificial intelligence. And inherent in technology is greater speed. And so there is a really interesting tension between being able to maintain resilience, also look at efficiency within the financial system broadly, but also to keep control of that speed factor. And I think that speed factor came through and was a driving force behind the problems that Silicon Valley Bank and others went through last year.
All right, let's continue the conversation on this year's Davos and bring in Professor John Gong from the University of International Business and Economics. Professor Gong, thank you for joining us. Let's address some of the biggest challenges and questions at this year's Davos, because we know overall the theme this year is about rebuilding trust. How difficult is this proposition in our very geopolitically charged world right now?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Michael. I think the fundamental problem is reflected in one of the four themes discussed at this year's Davos. That has to do with security and cooperation issues. The security problem is making building trust very difficult. This issue exists not just between countries that are competing against each other, for example, between the United States and China. You see what's happening, for example, in the Red Sea right now is also concerning, countries that have good relationships. What about the supply chain being disrupted? What about, the supply chain being not reliable? So I think there's, even mid countries that have friendly relationship, that have been trusting each other for decades, there's also a concern. And there's also a emerging popular view that I have to be more self-reliant. In other words, the anarchy argument is getting more and more popular, and that's not in the advantageous position for China, because we are the world's largest trading nation. We're always for trade. We like to have more trade. With the global trade dropping by 5% last year, this issue is becoming more and more severe. And I think from China's perspective, what's happening at Davos really resonates with China's interest. That is to have more cooperation among countries to solve these security problems and eventually finally rebuilding trust again.
Yeah, you said it, Professor. One of the four sub-themes for this year's Davos is indeed achieving security and cooperation. How do we do that in the fractured world that we see right now, right? So the question then is, how do we build more consensus in that case? The trend we're seeing is security. It's taking on a greater prominence for national governments. So how do we balance security and cooperation at the same time?
Yeah, I think the security issue is being more and more aggravated by the conflicts around the world, even for countries that are actually not directly involved in these conflicts, and for countries to actually take a neutrality position with respect to these conflicts. So I think the fundamental solution to the security problem is really all about peace. We need peace. We need peace in Ukraine. We need peace in the Middle East. And I think the countries that have stake in the world economic system really need to cooperate on trying to bring peace to these two conflicts. At least these are two largest conflicts, as well as other conflicts around the world. And I think that's where the role of cooperation comes into play. Definitely, I think there's room to play between the United States and China in terms of cooperation, even on security issues. I think both China and the United States have an interest in seeing peace in these two conflicts. So I think fundamentally we have to come back to the most fundamental theme, and that is peace.
Yeah. So then, Professor, as the world's second largest economy, contributing to about 1/3 of global growth and a major global power, how do you see China's role in rebuilding trust in the international community?
I think, very fortunately, we are enjoying peace, and I think Chinese national interests haven't been really too much negatively affected by the conflict so far. It affected a little bit, but I think, by and large, not so much affected as, for example, in countries in Europe. So we're enjoying peace right now, but I think, in terms of contributing to peace, I think China really needs to play a more proactive role in promoting solutions in these two conflicts. And I do think that China can potentially play a more important role, a more expansive role at least in the conflict in Gaza, because after all, China maintains fairly good relationships between with both the Arab side as well as the Israeli side. So I think that's probably one area that probably we're going to see more proactive involvement by China.
Yeah, well, rebuilding trust, very difficult, but absolutely necessary. Professor Gong, a pleasure as always to have you on the program. Professor Zhang Gong from UIB, thank you. Well, at Davos, CGTN's Zheng Junfeng spoke with She Haifeng, Vice President of LONGi, a global and Chinese leader in green technology. They discussed topics of green development and climate change that were prominent at the annual event. Take a listen.
China now is not only just the leader in capacity, but also the leader in technology. That's very important. So we actually, made a lot of achievement, which bring the whole, let's say, the cost of the solar renewable energy cost, down to make such kind of energy transition. From just possible down is feasible. I think that's very important.
Your company is a leading solar producer in China and of the world. What made your company's product so competitive, both in prices and technology?
We hold a world record of the efficiency, and according to our research, so today we are very much close to the, let's say, theoretical limitation of the silicon-based solar cells. We believe that the back-contact technology will be the ultimate solution, let's say, in next 3 years. So
what technology?
Back-contact. Yeah. So it's a technology. In the past, solar cell, you have to, if you want to make electricity, you have to put a lot of silver busbar on the front.
Yeah.
So LONGi's new technology is to move all the silver busbar from front to the back side. We're gonna have a very comprehensive new product launching by the end of Q1 this year.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think that we will launch the new back-contact technology and the product in China as well as in Europe in the same time. I think the vision of LONGi is to bring, affordable energy to the world, to drive, to accelerate the energy transition. So we drive down the cost by innovation, by efficiency, not just by lower down the price. It's different aspect. So I believe that we can, make the company have sustainable growth as well as lower down the cost at the same time in parallel. That's our vision and also our strategy.
And another key highlight of the week-long gathering in Davos is a significant focus on more women in leadership. Our Xu Yi reports.
This is the daily picture you see during the week-long meeting for the World Economic Forum at the Congress Hall in Davos.
Some critics say that Davos gathering here is where rich, middle-aged, mostly men hang out. But is it true?
Li Xia, the founder of an off-grid solar home system manufacturer, was the sole recipient from China this year and the first Chinese woman to receive the award of Social Innovator for the World Economic Forum this year. She emphasizes the importance of empowering women in the business.
I think this is somehow from my growing up experience. I was born in a rural family, stopped my middle school because of poverty, and I keep myself studying for high education while doing a business. So the same experience really encouraged me to do something, contribute back to the same population.
During last year's summer Davos in Tianjin, I met with a female CEO leading a company specializing in quantum computing technology. She highlighted the challenges women entrepreneurs still face, but emphasized the unique strength and advantages they bring to the table.
Davos in China, which we've met last year. This is pretty crucial since all the research shows that having female in business and kind of equality balance is healthy and is more productive and makes teams work better and perform better, you as female founders need to remember that you are female, and this is a great asset being a female. So don't try to be like male, meaning, fighting with testosterone, having like huge egos playing around, and being competitive in this male way. Be yourself, be female, and you're equally talented and able to run successfully your business.
I know a lot of people is mentioned about a woman entrepreneur, why they need to put a woman before the entrepreneur. So from my point of view, entrepreneur is entrepreneur. No matter you are male or you are female, I think the entrepreneur challenge is the same. How you make the business case successful. You prove your concept first, and then how you're going to scale up your business, and how you want to grow with all your partners, include your employees, your customers, and also the end users. This is the challenge for all the entrepreneur. So I don't want to just distinguish a female entrepreneur or male entrepreneur.
This year, the forum is collaborating with companies and governments worldwide to promote increased female labor force participation and advanced equity in pay and leadership positions.
Well, according to the session with the theme Man-Woman Pathways to Equity during this year's Davos gathering, gender parity cannot be achieved by women alone. The role of fathers, sons, uncles, grandfathers is also fundamental, as is the broader role to the society and institutions. Xu Yi, CGTN, Davos, Switzerland.
And up next here on Global Business. Investing in China. Fresh data from China's Commerce Ministry shows the number of newly established foreign investment businesses jumped by nearly 40% in 2023 compared to the previous year.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Well, foreign direct investment here in China experienced a decline in 2023, marking the first annual decrease in 8 years. However, the total FDI received by the China market amounted to some 1.1 trillion yuan, or nearly 158 billion US dollars, which remains higher than the level seen before the pandemic. Now, despite the overall decrease in FDI, there was a significant increase of nearly 40% in the number of newly established foreign invested enterprises. On a sector basis, foreign investment in medical equipment manufacturing and construction showed the most significant gains. Now, several advanced economies, including France and the Netherlands, have significantly increased their investment here in China, with FDI from both countries surging by over 80% last year. Meanwhile, data shows that China's manufacturers made a strong comeback from the pandemic in 2023. Officials also said that China remained the world's top manufacturer for a 14th straight year. Our Dai Kai-yi has more.
China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology says industrial output grew 4.6% year-on-year in 2023. And for a 14th consecutive year, China remained the world's biggest manufacturer. It was a milestone year in the country's industrial history, marked by a significant rebound in economic recovery 3 years after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology is ramping up new industrialization, boosting manufacturing, and seeing an overall positive trend in industrial recovery. The information and communication industry is advancing rapidly for solid, high-quality development.
Official data shows electric machinery and vehicle manufacturing recorded double-digit growth last year. China made and sold 30 million cars, exporting more than 4 million of them as the world's largest auto exporter in 2023. The industry ministry says it will support businesses in collaborative innovation with a focus on pushing technological boundaries in manufacturing automotive chips, solid-state batteries, and autonomous driving technology. All this to make EV products even more competitive. Combined, EV, lithium battery, and solar panel exports surpassed 1 trillion yuan or $140 billion last year. Authorities also supported emerging industries like new materials and robotics. The information and communications technology industry also saw rapid growth. In 2023, telecom service revenue grew by 6.2%, emerging as a crucial economic driver. Meanwhile, China has established over 3 million 5G base stations and is ranked as the world's second-largest computing power.
In 2024, the ministry is focused on high-quality development, actively addressing challenges to reinforce the positive momentum in industrial recovery and drive ongoing excellence in industry and communication.
The industry ministry says it aims to solidify the recovery trend in the industrial economy, laying a robust material and technological foundation for Chinese modernization. China is pursuing what it terms new industrialization, which basically means shifting production to a more technology-driven and sustainable model. Officials believe because of China's massive market scale, its industrial system, and information infrastructure, the country can actually sustain that growth momentum in the following months. CGTN, Beijing.
And earlier today, a symposium focusing on China's macroeconomic situation was held here in Beijing. Numerous experts gathered to delve into the opportunities and challenges that China will likely face this year. CGTN's Wang Tianyu reports.
Organized by the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies of Renmin University of China, the forum delved into various topics concerning China's macroeconomy. These included discussions on geopolitical uncertainties, internal risks, and the performance of the capital market.
Right now, there's a lot of intense political competition happening globally. Around 50 countries are set to hold major elections, marking the most ever in history. And the outcomes in many places are uncertain, which contributes to increased volatility to the global political situation.
Despite global uncertainties, China achieved medium high-speed growth in 2023, surpassing its annual target of around 5% with a year-on-year GDP growth of 5.2%. Experts believe that the positive development is expected to continue in 2024.
I think this year's GDP growth target should still be around 5%. Although there are some difficulties, the achievement is to be expected. Since August 2023, we saw a series of supportive policies coming out, and those policies will be more and more effective this year. So I think a 5% growth rate is very likely to be achieved in 2024.
According to attending economists, China's relatively sluggish stock market is expected to see a silver lining in 2024.
We would like to see an inflection point this year. First, more policies aiming to stabilize the market are expected to be rolled out. Second, the economy recovery is still going steadily.
During the forum, experts emphasized the need for increased domestic reforms and international cooperation, highlighting that China's economy possesses strong potential and will continue to make significant contributions to the global economy. Wang Tianyu, CGTN, Beijing.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wong here in Beijing. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.